The wine burned down Carilla's throat like fire as the words floated in slow motion across the candlelit room. William Dane's voice was calm but cruel, his mouth curled in contempt. My son deserves better than someone from the gutter. Around them, crystal clinked, forks paused midair, and 23 pairs of eyes turned from the table to her. She sat in a borrowed designer gown, surrounded by the rich and ruthless, pretending she belonged. Carilla's hands clenched under the linen napkin, nails carving crescents into her palms. She folded the napkin slowly, placed it on the untouched salmon and stood. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. Dane," she said. Her voice did not shake. "And thank you for finally being honest." Every eye in the room held its breath. "My name is Carilla. I'm 32. I built my life from nothing. And this is the story of how I turned one man's insult into the most expensive mistake of his life." "Carilla, don't," murmured Idris, gripping her hand. She squeezed gently, then released him. "It's fine, love," she said. "Your father's right. I should know my place." William's smirk returned, thinking he'd won, that he'd broken her spirit. But Carilla walked out of the grand dining hall with her head high. Past the Monet in the hallway, past the staff trained to avoid eye contact, past the Bentley William had proudly declared worth more than she'd earned in 5 years. She reached her modest Toyota, and Idris caught up, breathless and apologetic. "I'm sorry. I had no idea he'd." She pulled him close. "It's not your fault." Tears streaked his face. "I'll make him apologize." She tucked a strand of his dark hair behind his ear. "No more apologies. He's been thinking this for a year. Now we know." Idris's voice cracked. "Please don't let this ruin us." She kissed his forehead. "He can't ruin what's real. I'll call you tomorrow." Carilla drove into the night, city lights reflecting in the windshield like tiny stars she'd once been told she could never reach. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. Likely Idris's mother or his sister, trying to soften the blow. Nice women, but spineless. She had more important calls to make. "Voice dial, Danielle," she instructed. Her assistant of 6 years answered immediately. "Miss Carilla? Is everything all right?" "Cancel the Dane-Tech merger," Carilla said as she merged onto the highway. "Tonight." There was a stunned silence on the line. "Ma'am, the due diligence is complete. The contract's ready. We're closing Monday." "I'm aware." "Kill it. Termination fees will be enormous." "I don't care. Draft the notice. Cite irreconcilable differences." A long pause. "What did he do?" "He called me garbage. In front of everyone." Danielle didn't ask more. Her fingers tapped rapidly on a keyboard. "Termination letter in 1 hour. Want me to leak it?" "Not yet. Let him wake up to it." "Also," Carilla added, "set up a meeting with Alder and Bryce." Danielle blinked. "Their biggest competitor?" "Yes. Let's see if Alder's interested in playing kingmaker." "You're going to buy his rival? Garbage has to stick together, right?" Carilla hung up, the ghost of a smile on her lips. The car hummed through the night, the city skyline rising like a crown ahead. She thought of her past, foster homes, sleeping in shelters, working 3 jobs, surviving off free lunches. William thought he knew her. He'd read the public file. Poverty, hustle, community college. What he hadn't discovered was the empire she'd built behind closed doors. Cross Nova Industries. The very company Dane-Tech needed to survive the tech revolution. He didn't know she owned it. She'd been careful. Used proxies. Operated in the shadows. Because power didn't need a spotlight, it needed strategy. And he'd just become the first casualty of her silence. She was unlocking her penthouse door when her phone buzzed again. Martin Kieding. The screen read. Dane-Tech's CFO. Fast reaction. She answered. "Carilla, I'm sorry to call so late. We just received notice of merger termination. There must be some mistake." "No mistake, Martin. But we're scheduled to sign Monday. The board's approved." "Investors. Then the board should have thought twice before their CEO publicly degraded me." Silence. What did William do?" "Ask him," she said coldly. "I'm sure he has a version he likes." She hung up. Scotch in hand, she stepped onto her balcony. The city glittered below, unaware it had just gained a new queen. Somewhere across town, William Dane was reading the document that would ruin his year. She hoped it stung. By sunrise, Carilla's phone had logged 47 missed calls. 6 from William himself. She smirked, sipping coffee on her balcony, robe wrapped tight against the morning chill. The man who'd called her garbage now begged for conversation. There was something delicious in that irony. Her assistant rang just as she opened the quarterly reports. Bloomberg got wind of the cancelled merger, Danielle said. They want a statement. Carilla didn't miss a beat. Tell them Cross Nova is exploring partnerships more aligned with our values and long-term vision. A pause. Devastatingly vague, Danielle murmured. I love it. Then, also, William Dane is downstairs. Carilla's eyebrows lifted. He's here. Lobby. Refuses to leave. Security's holding him. Danielle sounded like she was relishing every second. Should I have him removed? Carilla considered it, then smiled. No. Let him stew. Put him in conference room C. Make him wait. 30 minutes. I'm still eating. 45 minutes later, she entered the conference room. William stood immediately. His suit was wrinkled. His hair, usually military precise, had a human flaw today. He looked older, smaller. Thank you for seeing me, he began stiffly. Carilla didn't shake his hand. She took the seat opposite him and crossed her legs. You have 5 minutes. His pride slid down his throat like sand. I apologize for last night. My words were inappropriate, she interrupted. You called me garbage in front of your circle. In your home. While I was your guest. That's not inappropriate. That's war. He cleared his throat. I was drunk. No, she said flatly. You were honest. Drunk words, sober thoughts. You looked at me and saw dirt. He flinched. She leaned in. The only mistake you made was thinking I'd take it. William swallowed hard. What do you want? An apology? You have it. Public if needed. But the merger? Why? She asked. Why should it happen? He blinked. Because it's business. Not personal. Carilla stood. Everything is personal when you humiliate someone at your dinner table. You researched me, didn't you? Dug into my past. Foster homes. Warehouse jobs. You stopped there. You assumed that was the end of the story. She walked to the window, pointing at the skyline. You never saw where I was going. He opened his mouth, then closed it. You think Cross Nova succeeds because of tech? She continued. No. It succeeds because I remember what hunger feels like. Because I hire people who fight like I did. Your company exists to protect privilege. Mine. To challenge it. Carilla turned and faced him, voice low and cutting. Name one person on your board who didn't go to an Ivy League school. One executive who clawed their way out of poverty. One who didn't inherit their title. William said nothing. The silence admitted guilt. The merger is dead, she declared. Not because you insulted me, but because you showed me who you really are, and who your company really serves. William looked down at his trembling hands. This will destroy us, he whispered. Danetech won't survive 2 years without that merger. Carilla headed for the door. Then maybe it shouldn't. What about Idris? William blurted. You're going to destroy his father's legacy? His inheritance? Carilla froze at the doorway. Idris is brilliant. He doesn't need to inherit power. He can build it. She turned, eyes blazing. That's the difference between us. You believe inheritance is destiny. I see it as a crutch. He'll never forgive you, William said. Maybe not, she replied. But at least he'll know I have principles. Can you say the same? She walked out, heels echoing on the marble floor like war drums. William remained seated. A man who'd finally realized the crown on his head was paper. Back in her office, Danielle handed her a thick stack of messages. Alder and Bryce want a Monday meeting. Very eager. Carilla nodded. Leak it by noon. Let William learn about it with the rest of the world. Danielle gave a wicked grin. Already done. Then she hesitated. Idris is here. In your office. Carilla's breath caught. How long? An hour. He brought coffee. And tissues. She softened. He called the main line. When I said you were with his father, he asked to wait. Karila squared her shoulders. I'll see him. Idris sat in her desk chair, long legs curled under him like a boy again. His eyes were red but dry. Hi, he said quietly. Hi, she replied. I saw what you told him. Danielle let me watch. Karila sat on the edge of her desk. And he stood, stepping close. I think I've been a coward. Letting him speak to you like that. Hoping he'd change. Making excuses. Idris, no. Let me say it. I've benefited from his bigotry. I let you carry the burden alone. Last night, I was ashamed. Not of you. Of him. Of myself. What are you saying? Karila asked. Idris took her hands in his. I'm saying I want to build something with you. Not his money. Not his name. Just us. She looked up at him, searching his face for fear or doubt. He's right about one thing, Idris said. Walking away from that inheritance won't be easy. He grinned. But you just torched a $2 billion merger because he insulted you. I think we'll survive. She smiled. I love you, she said. Especially now. Even if you started a corporate war with my father? Especially because of that. Her phone buzzed again. Danielle's voice came through. Ma'am, Daintech is holding an emergency board meeting. They're considering reaching out. Without William. Karila put her phone on speaker. Tell them Cross Nova may consider a merger. Under new leadership. Emphasis on new. Idris's eyebrows rose. You're going to take my father's company? I'm going to give the board a choice, Karila replied. Evolve or perish. He won't go quietly, Idris warned. I know. My mother will cry. Understandably. My sister will write another awful song. Karila chuckled. Let her. We start now. By Monday, William Dane was no longer CEO of Daintech. By Tuesday, the merger between the restructured company and Cross Nova was announced. By Wednesday, Idris had officially joined as head of strategic development. He'd turned down his father's spite-fueled offer to fund a rival venture. And by Thursday, William Dane had learned the most expensive lesson of his life. Never call someone garbage unless you're prepared to be thrown out with it. 6 months passed. Karila had almost forgotten the way William's voice grated on her nerves. She and Idris were engaged now, planning a small wedding far from society's flashbulbs. No headline announcements. No power guest list. Just them, a quiet coastal village, and the people who had stood by them when it mattered. Karila stood barefoot on the balcony of their shared loft that overlooked the city, sipping from a mug Idris had bought on their first date. Cheap ceramic with a fading cartoon on it. A world away from the crystal glasses at William's dining table. And somehow, so much more valuable. William hadn't spoken to either of them since the board ousted him. He hadn't tried. Pride was a prison, and William lived inside his. But Rachel, Idris's mother, called weekly. The conversations were cautious at first. Apologies wrapped in awkward pleasantries. But week by week, they grew into something tender. Real. Karila respected Rachel's courage to call, to own up, to rebuild. She didn't need to be loud. She just needed to show up. And she did. Their conversations became rituals. Quick updates. Sometimes laughter. Sometimes tears. But always honest. And that honesty had a quiet, healing power neither of them expected. Karila had redesigned the Cross Nova offices since the merger. Gone were the cold gray walls and stiff silence. Now walls bore art from unknown youth painters. The lounge had been bags and soft jazz. And every Thursday afternoon, teams gathered for open mic hour, a space where anyone, from intern to exec, could speak or sing or scream. Danielle had rolled her eyes at first. What is this? A startup daycare? But 2 weeks in, she was up there reading her poetry. And when she finished, the staff gave her a standing ovation. Even Karila had tears in her eyes. When reporters called to ask about her legacy, Karila always laughed. Legacy is for people who want statues built. I'm more into tearing walls down. She didn't want to be remembered as the woman who destroyed William Dane. She wanted to be remembered as the woman who redefined what power looked like, and who deserved to hold it. She hired from shelters. She mentored from prisons. She created a fund for single mothers who needed seed capital to start over. People helped me when I had nothing, she told her board. Now it's our turn. One day, an envelope arrived at the office. Handwritten. No stamp. Just her name in William Dane's angular scrawl. Karila held it for a moment, unsure if she even wanted to open it. Inside was a single sheet of thick, cream paper. No apology. No plea. Just 2 words written in ink too precise to be anything but rehearsed. You won. She placed the letter back in the envelope and tucked it into a drawer. Victory, she decided, didn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes, it was just quiet acknowledgement that the war had ended. And you were still standing. That night, Idris came home late, hair windswept from his bike ride. He dropped his helmet on the table and kissed her forehead. You okay? She handed him the letter. He read it and chuckled. That stubborn man. Do you think he meant it? She asked. Idris leaned against the kitchen counter. No. But he wrote it anyway. That's progress. He tossed the envelope aside and opened the fridge. We still have that leftover curry? In the back. Unless Danielle ate it. He grinned. She wouldn't dare. Life, it turned out, tasted better with spice and shared leftovers. Fairchild Corporation called again, this time offering a massive joint project in renewable tech. Karila took the meeting in jeans and sneakers, no makeup, hair in a bun. The CEO, a sharp-eyed woman named Marit, didn't bat an eye. We've been following your work, Marit said. Your vision matches ours. Then let's talk solutions, Karila said. No pretense. No begging. She wasn't building empires anymore. She was building futures. The kind that didn't care who your parents were or how expensive your last dinner had been. Once in a while, Karila returned to the neighborhood where she grew up. She walked past the rusting swing set behind the shelter. Past the bodega that once let her owe food. Past the library where she'd read about women like her, except they always stayed poor in those stories. She donated anonymously to the shelter. Funded renovations for the school. No press releases. Just a quiet promise to the girl she once was. You were always enough. And the world? It would never again tell girls like her that they were garbage. At their engagement dinner, small, candlelit, just friends, Danielle stood to make a toast. To the woman who taught us that respect isn't inherited, it's earned. And to the man who knew when to stop being a prince and start being a partner. Idris blushed. Karila beamed. The table clapped and clinked glasses. Outside, the city buzzed. But inside that room, everything was warm, steady, real. Karila looked around the table. Danielle. Idris. Her team. Her chosen family. No billion-dollar room had ever felt this full. She leaned over to Idris and whispered, Remember when your father called me garbage? He laughed softly. Yeah. And you took out the trash. She smiled, lifted her glass again and said, To new kingdoms. Built from scratch. And better. The room erupted in cheer. And the girl who once borrowed dresses walked into forever in a crown she forged herself. Sometime later, Karila wrote a letter she never sent. Not to William, but to the girl she once was. The one who stood outside store windows pretending her reflection was rich. She told that girl she'd made it, not just financially, but fully. That love was real, power could be kind, and being underestimated was the best camouflage in the world. She folded the letter and placed it in her journal. A quiet time capsule for a victory no one else needed to understand. The world, of course, had things to say. Rumors swirled. That Karila was ruthless. That she'd orchestrated the merger fallout to humiliate William. That Idris was a pawn. Karila didn't respond to the tabloids. She never had to. The truth didn't need headlines, it needed impact. And that was happening every day. In pay raises. In safer offices. In employees who for the first time felt seen. Every ripple told a truer story than gossip ever could. One rainy Thursday, an old colleague from Karila's earliest job called her. They hadn't spoken in years. I saw you on the news, the woman said. You made us proud. You showed them. Karila sat quietly, listening to the rain patter against the window. Thanks, she said. But it wasn't about showing them. It was about showing us. That night she didn't sleep. Not from regret, but from hope. Because if she could do it, maybe someone else could too. Over tea one evening, Idris asked, "Do you think your father would be proud of you?" Karila paused, stirring her cup. Her father had died when she was 13. A kind man. Gentle. Often jobless. But never unkind. "He wouldn't understand all this," she said. "But he'd love who I've become." Idris nodded. "Then that's enough." It was. In the end, it always came back to love and respect. The only currencies worth building empires from. Cross Nova kept growing, but Karila kept saying no. No to going public. No to glossy magazine covers. No to panels where she'd be a token. "You're a mystery," one investor had told her. "No," she replied. "I'm just not for sale." She chose quiet power. Chose to mentor rather than parade. To seed rather than spotlight. To build something that would outlive her ego. When they married, Idris insisted on one empty chair at the back of the ceremony. No name on it. Just a gesture. Karila didn't ask, but she knew. That chair was for a father who could have shown up, but didn't. It wasn't bitterness. It was truth. The kind of truth that no longer hurt, but simply existed, like a closed book on a shelf. Still part of the story, but not the ending. People asked how it ended. Karila always replied, "It didn't end. It evolved." Because this wasn't a fairy tale. She didn't get everything. She lost sleep. Lost friends. Lost illusions. But what she gained? Respect. Partnership. A team that knew her name before her title. A love that stood when everything else fell. She never called herself queen. Never needed a throne. Her legacy was in footsteps, in the ones that followed. Women. Fighters. Underdogs. People with big dreams and small wallets. They didn't ask permission. They just showed up, uninvited, and made the room better. The way she had. And that, to her, was worth more than any crown. Years later, someone interviewed her for a podcast. The host asked, "If you could sum up your journey in one sentence, what would it be?" Karila thought for a long moment. "Sometimes the trash they try to throw out," she said, "turns out to be the fire that burns down their kingdom." The episode went viral. And so Karila's story lived, not in boardrooms or tabloids, but in whispers passed between dreamers. Between interns late at night and founders afraid to pitch. Between women told they were too loud, too poor, too angry, too much. She never set out to inspire. She set out to survive. And in doing so, she gave the world something rarer than revenge. She gave it hope.
Every story carries a lesson. If this one moved you, tap subscribe so you never miss the next twist in the journey.